I'm always fascinated when people get caught committing fraud and they're being interviewed and they start saying, well, I apologize to my family. I apologize to my Lord. I apologize to this one and to that one. I'm really sorry that I was doing this. It must have been a failure of me, etc., 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 etc. Don't you think that these people also had that same thought when they were actually committing fraud? Well, I wondered, and I've tried to determine what it needs to be able to commit fraud and not get caught. Now, most of the work I do in fraud work involves looking into employee suspicions of employees committing fraud against the company or by owners of privately held companies committing fraud against the company. Now, people who own companies commit fraud against the company, not to commit it against themselves, obviously, but they committed against the company to cheat somebody else who has a financial interest in the company. But for this particular set of videos, I'm going to conduct discussions over employee fraud. And in this particular one, I'm going to go through three aspects of it. The first aspect to be able to commit fraud is to be liked. Believe it or not, we like to like people and we like to work with people we like and nice people we like because they're pleasant. And if someone is reasonably good at their job, they soon build up a certain level of trust by their employers, and therefore they're able to do the job not only more efficiently, but on the wrong side, they're able to see sometimes that there's a shortcut, there's a weakness, there's some problem inside the handling of their area, which they for whatever reason decide not to tell their employer. Now, sometimes even if they tell their employer may not be all that happy to have that kind of news, or maybe in the wrong mood that day. So there's not always a guarantee that if they tell their employer they found the weakness, the employer is going to be so happy. So many people find this crack in the system and simply say nothing. Sometimes they'll do a test where it looks like they've committed a little accident or made a mistake and did something, and somehow something went wrong, and somehow money went somewhere else. If that happens and it's brought to their attention right away, they will very often say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I made a mistake," etc., etc. And what they're probably really doing is hoping that they don't get caught, and so they can do it again. So the beginning is they have to be liked, and they have to be friendly, and they have to be nice always. The second one, and this is the toughest aspect of committing fraud, is the act of secrecy. Committing fraud is the only business operation one can conduct that no matter how successful they are, they must never talk about it. They cannot talk about it to their best friends, to their confidant, to their spouses, to their significant others. They can talk about it to their car or to a doorknob, but to nothing else that has ears and can speak. It is so delicate that no matter how long after the act has been committed, or even if it's still being committed, or if they're long past the point of being able to be sued or arrested, they still cannot talk about it because they'll be discussing it with people they know, and people they know are going to say, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm friends with this person who's really a crook," and that doesn't do very much good for someone's respect. It could be even decades later. So keeping secrecy is paramount to be kept all the way to the last breath. Even the famous Deep Throat, who did not commit any crime, kept silent for almost 30 years after the act happened in Watergate, but he eventually came up because he didn't want to keep the secret. Keeping a secret means you have it in your mind, and it is always kept in your mind. You do not allow it to get all the way down to your lips. Now, that takes, believe it or not, a certain amount of effort, and you're talking about an effort that could go on over literally decades. The next part is modesty. If someone is stealing an amount of money far greater than their salary, they're mounting up this cash. No one knows, no one suspects, no one's watching, and they continue taking in the money. Say, for example, they've gone on for a couple of years and they have a lot of money. Well, why do people commit fraud? They commit fraud to get money to spend the money. So what is the money going to do for you if it's sitting stuffed in a closet or in a mattress or in a safe deposit box? You want to be able to enjoy the extra money you got from having stolen it. Well, here's a problem in today's world. virtually everything we do that's really worthwhile doing involves paperwork. Now, the fact that someone has spent a lot of money on a car, even in cash, doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to be coming after them to put them in prison. If they go and buy a car that they would normally be able to afford, a $30,000 car, they bought a $100,000 car in cash, the dealer will definitely take their $100,000 in cash, but they won't turn the car over to them until they've signed a whole bunch of paperwork, including registrations, proof of insurance, and other documents that will stay on file until somebody in some position gets some suspicion about this person, and start to do some research. If they take a massive world cruise that costs way more than they can afford, well, there's all kinds of passport punches and documents and tickets that will reflect somewhere that they spent a whole lot of money, more than they actually were earning, and they didn't just win a lottery or inherit a whole bunch of money. They in fact got this money very suspiciously. If this gets into the right hands with the right amount of interest in it, all they have to do to reel this person in is to start finding out the various paper trails by the cash they spent. And if you look at through the exercises I've done with CPAs and seminars about what do you do in a situation like this, if, say, for example, you were the one stealing the money and it was way beyond your salary. And we would go through about 25 or 30 different items, including, by the way, getting mistresses and boy toys. So apparently some people can be quite creative. And the point comes down to the amount of places and the amount of assets you can buy and pleasure you can have for pure cash without any kind of record is so limited that it almost makes it impossible to not reveal the amount of money that was stolen. On the next video, there's going to be more ideas on what someone has to do to commit fraud successfully.